Hello and welcome to Wolf and Friends Gaming. We're doing another top 10, actually. We're doing top 10 games that are really for adults, or M-rated games.
Mature gamers will do. Warning, mature content in video, some features are unsuitable for children.
So with that, let us move forward to actually what is an M-rated game?
That's right. Most people think that video games are for children, but some would be surprised to learn that they are not. That's why they created the M-rated game. M-rated games are for mature gamers who wish to play games to help their craving for violence, blood, sex, and drugs. Only in video games, of course.
Although some games may contain that and be rated for T, M-rated games actually go a bit further with their excessive use of gore or of language.
Unfortunately, some children play games that they were not meant to play at all, including games that were really meant for adults but were mistaken for children's games. That's what this top 10 is all about this time. However, these games are very adult and dark and can corrupt a child for anyone who plays them.
If any parents are watching, look out for the following titles.
So let's find out, starting with number 10, what games that children shouldn't play at all and adult gamers should love and play with amusement. Portal 2. That's right. This game, despite being sent for children at first and being rated E, with having funny robots, it lacks M-rated content, surprisingly. However, the environment is very unsettling and disturbing, considering that you're in a broken-down factory run by a corrupt AI that wants to kill every living thing inside of it by putting it in a dangerous death trap. This game has a lot of adult undertones and subtext between the characters, despite only two characters actually talking. Unless you count Cave Johnson, where you find out his decline into insanity and how the company became destroyed and run by the rogue AI. This rogue AI killed all of the employees on Take Your Daughter to Work Day, and you're helped by Wheatley, who turns against you. See our top 10 betrayals for that. However, Wheatley goes insane. However, they gave Gladys and Wheatley sexual voices to attract more players, which is why it's very adult despite the E rating.
Now, without further ado, move to our number 9.
Injustice, Gods Among Us. You knew this was going to be on the list, considering it's a game about superheroes, which of course would draw the attention of children. However, it's anything but family-friendly if you see the violence packed inside. For starters, Superman, of all characters, is the villain in the game. Yes, Superman, every child's hero, second to Batman, of course. However, he kills multiple people on screen, and he becomes the main villain of this game. In an alternate world where Superman goes crazy and conquers the world, it's up to the heroes from the main DC universe to fight the regime Superman and overthrow him. But besides Superman's obvious fall into villainy, we also get a lot of blood, gore, and violence, and a lot of sexual implications between Superman, Wonder Woman, and of course Batman and Catwoman. Very, very adult, and every time I play this game, I actually hear a child's voice on the internet, of course, through microphones, which is kind of shocking considering this game has on-screen death all the time. Very violent. But with the regime out of the way, let's move on to our number 8. That's right, it keeps getting worse and worse. What could be number 8? The Dark Stalkers series. Although it's a cartoony fighting game with magical creatures from an alternate world, it has a lot of dark adult themes. Considering, first off, the game has a lot of hypersexualized characters and a lot of very dark characters with horrific backstories. The sexual characters, of course, there's a character designed for every person's sexual desire and theme. And it's not just for the men, too. There's also male sexual characters later in the games. But this is pretty much the main basis of Dark Stalkers, with having attractive characters. However, they also have dark characters, ones that like to murder and have horrific backstories where they were either serial killers or banished to alternate dimensions or given powers by Satan. Speaking of which, God and Satan are actually characters in the Dark Stalkers game. In fact, one of the story arcs involves you trying to stop Satan from killing God and preventing him from being born so Satan could conquer the universe. Very weird stuff, but the Dark Stalkers was definitely made for adults, but it's mistaken for a kid's game at first when it came out because it's on Marvel vs. Capcom, and everyone knows that it's for all ages. But nevertheless, the Dark Stalkers will remain in the dark since it's lost a bit of popularity because of that. Now, moving on to number 7, Alice, The Madness Returns, and its first game, Alice in Wonderland by American McGee. If you thought that this was the Disney Alice, you are way off. This is anything but the classic tale of Alice in Wonderland. Instead, it's a darker, gothic, realistic version of Alice in Wonderland. As you can see, all of her characters from the Wonderland tales have been warped into darker characters who are supposed to fight Alice or help her overthrow the Queen of Hearts or the Doll Maker in the second game. With characters warped so badly and intimidating, it's kind of shocking seeing that this beloved children's tale is now the darkest psychological horror game you could ever play. However, some people might think it's for kids just because Alice is in it, but it's about her mental breakdown and struggle with her sanity, and her trying to recover from that and move on with her life and become a normal, sane person. However, you deal with a lot of body horror, psychological horror, and of course, the main villain is someone you might see in your everyday life who turns out to be the most sadistic villain ever created in an Alice in Wonderland story. But now that we're out of Wonderland, we should probably move on to even darker games with our number 6 entry.
And finally, I get to speak again. So, for our number 6 on this list, we go to a classic game that I've played only like 2 times, the World of Warcraft. Now, everyone knows World of Warcraft because A, you have to pay every month, and it's about $60 a year, and B, it's very serious. The story behind the Warcraft games is what's dark, because you have 4 different races all clashing against each other. However, WoW goes a bit further, implementing more races, more backstory, and more dark quests. But that's only touching the surface of it. Underneath this game, you can find a lot of weird people online. You can also get drunk in the game, and surprisingly, you can have sex with other characters in this World of Warcraft. Why any parent would buy this game for their child is very interesting. Why my own mother bought it for me is also interesting. But I mean, yeah, this game can be dark, but it's more on this list because of its sexual nature, and the people you meet online can also be somewhat dangerous. And with the World of Warcraft gone, and with crazy gamers on it, we move to our number 5.
That's right. What can top these other 5 games you just watched? Well, let's find out. Mortal Kombat, the entire series. But Mortal Kombat was actually never meant for kids in the first place. It was another game designed for adults originally. It started off the fighting game trend, which was mostly targeting adults because it's about fighting to the death. Mortal Kombat has actually set a record for becoming even darker and darker as the sequel games go on. Considering that it's famous for finishing moves, where after you beat an opponent near death, you get to do a grand move to end their life for good and graphically on screen, while your main character celebrates their victory by dancing on their dead body.
Don't forget, in the newest games, they have the X-ray move, where as soon as you attack them, you actually see what happens to their body and what damage it can cause underneath the skin.
Although its violence has gone on since the first game, starting with a famous spine-ripping move, then just getting progressively more graphic as the games went on. Mortal Kombat will always be famous for its violent death battles, but that's why it's worthy of being on this list.
Number 4. If you thought Mortal Kombat was dark, you're gladly mistaken. There are some worse than that somehow.
Grand Theft Auto, the entire series of games. Grand Theft Auto is probably the father of all M-rated games, starting off basically why games can be bent for adults now, but not many parents figured that out until it was too late. Considering it took them a lot of games until they realized that it wasn't for children, Grand Theft Auto was designed for adults, and it still is, of course. You basically play as a villain protagonist trying to excel in the criminal empire and make something of yourself. You get to kill people, prostitutes included, homeless people, drug dealers, and cops, and including your own friends. Yes, it's that kind of game. But it's very good and actually pretty fun, but you don't want your child playing this at all, and I don't think I want to find out what child finds this entertaining, but Grand Theft Auto is always mistaken for a child's game.
Also, in this newest title, Grand Theft Auto 5, you are allowed to have drugs and alcohol. So, after that weird incident with GTA on our list again, we move to our number 3. Halo series, the entirety of it. With Halo 5 coming out, I'm wondering actually how dark it can be. I've read about it, and it's going to be sort of like a Civil War kind of thing. You'll have the old Spartan 2 models, which the Master Chief is a part of, versus the new models. So it's basically a clash of people who've known each other, or should have known each other for a while. But even without those, the previous Halo games were somewhat dark. Halo 1 got dark as soon as the Flood came in. And the Flood, well, let's just think of them as space zombies that keep coming back in every game except for Halo Wars and Halo Reach. Halo's a pretty fun game, actually, but, I mean, it's dark in its story because the Spartans were actually children who were abducted by a scientist and then warped to become super soldiers. Like I said, the Flood is dark. Cortana has been revamped in every single title to be more and more sexual, which is amazing. And when you're people on multiplayer, you do not want to talk with these people over a screen because they will yell at you no matter what. And you can have some perverts on the other side. So yeah, Halo. Fun game, but not meant for children.
Now, number 2. What could top that Halo game?
Personal favorite of his.
Batman, the Arkham series. It's actually a miracle that this game series was not rated M, at least until Arkham Knight came out. Although some parents buy this game for their children because it's Batman, and we all know that Batman's only for children, right? Wrong. This game series was targeted at adult Batman fans, which is why it was so great and popular. However, nevertheless, there are always going to be children buying Batman stuff, even if it includes Batman brutally beating people and the Joker killing people on screen. For kids, you know? Batman's villains are actually even darker than they ever were in this series. Scarecrow and Joker are actually the biggest cases, considering that the Joker kills people on screen, and the Scarecrow is known for torturing people and injecting drugs into people with his syringe hand there, but he's also gotten worse by Arkham Knight by becoming the main villain, with on-screen kills too in his favor. Nevertheless, Batman Arkham series is not for children, okay? It's very dark, and just because it's Batman doesn't mean it's good. Batman's villains are also... The females are very sexualized, actually, considering that they all come on to Batman, and the male villains are all sociopathic murderers who get the honor of killing Batman on screen if you just fail a mission. What could be worse than that? Well, let's find out with our number 1 entry. The king of all M-rated games and games that children actually play online.
It's a pretty obvious one, actually. Call of Duty. Not only does this spark huge debate of if it's the best FPS game, but it sparks debate of whether or not video games are actually violent. I mean, this in every single case, when people bring up are video games violent, Call of Duty always takes the cake on it, because everybody knows Call of Duty, almost everybody plays it, and it is very dark. The first about 8 games, I would say, actually have World War II themed missions, which isn't really dark until World at War, when you team up with Reznov, who's a Russian, and you're basically reliving the Battle of Berlin, where you topple down the German flag. World at War was also the first game to incorporate the zombies mode. However, newest titles, Black Ops, Black Ops 2, and Black Ops 3 have become increasingly darker, alongside Modern Warfare 2, with the most infamous mission of all time, No Russian, where you team up with terrorists to get on their good side, and it opens up with you killing a bunch of unarmed civilians in an airport. Yeah, for children.
COD's #1 on our list. But let's see some honorable mentions that you might have wanted on this list but didn't quite make it. Transformers, the Cybertron series. I felt like this could have been on the list, but it wasn't worth it because I feel like it's more for all ages, actually. Yeah, there are adult references, but it's also child-friendly because they're just robots killing each other. So I felt like it didn't belong on the actual list. And Mass Effect. I felt like this didn't belong on the list because it's already standard for adults, and I'm pretty sure no child is interested in this game at all, considering it's so slow and character developing. But thank you for watching. We hope you like, subscribe, and thumbs up on our video, and watch future videos by Wolf and Friends Gaming.
Bye-bye.